The crystal chandelier above the dining table caught the light from a dozen candles as my husband Derek raised his wine glass for the third toast of the evening. His face was flushed, not from alcohol, but from the attention he was basking in like a cat in sunlight. "To real American heroes," his boss Marcus bellowed, clinking his glass against Derek's with such force I worried they'd shatter. "Men who put their lives on the line for this country." Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. I watched Derek's jaw tighten in that familiar way, the slight twitch at the corner of his mouth that I'd learned to read over our 7 years together. Pride mixed with something else, something darker that I'd been pretending not to notice for far too long. "It was nothing, really," Derek said with practiced humility, though his chest puffed out like a peacock's display. "Just doing my duty. Afghanistan changes a man, you know. The things we saw, the brothers we lost." His voice cracked on that last word. A perfect performance. I felt my fingernails dig into my palm beneath the white linen tablecloth. "Your wife must be so proud," Marcus's wife Patricia gushed, turning to me with eyes shining with admiration. "Having a genuine war hero for a husband. The sacrifices military families make." All eyes turned to me, Derek's especially. There was a warning in his gaze, sharp as broken glass. The same look he'd given me in the car ride over when I'd suggested maybe, just maybe, he shouldn't embellish quite so much tonight. "Embellish?" he'd hissed, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. "I'm not embellishing anything, Rachel. This is who I am. This is what I did for our country. Maybe if you actually supported me instead of questioning me." The rest had dissolved into familiar accusations. My lack of support, my failure to understand, my inability to appreciate what he'd been through. But here's what Patricia and Marcus and the other executives gathered around this ostentatious dining table didn't know. I did support veterans. Genuinely. Completely. With every fiber of my being. Because I was one. "Rachel," Patricia prompted again, her smile beginning to falter at my silence. I forced my own smile, the one I'd perfected over the past 3 years. "Very proud," I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. Derek's shoulders relaxed. He reached over and squeezed my hand, a gesture of affection for our audience. His fingers were ice cold. "She's always been the quiet type," Derek explained with a chuckle that made my skin crawl. "Prefers to stay in the background while I handle the big stuff. Isn't that right, honey?" The other guests laughed politely. I felt myself shrinking, disappearing into the antique chair like I was made of smoke. This was how it always went. Derek painting his elaborate portrait of military valor while I sat silent, complicit in his fiction. Each dinner party, each corporate event, each casual conversation with neighbors became another brick in the wall of lies we were building together. Except I wasn't building it. I was being buried under it. "Tell them about the ambush," Marcus urged, leaning forward with the eagerness of a child hearing a bedtime story. "The one where you saved those civilians." I reached for my water glass with a trembling hand. This was new. The stories were getting bigger, more elaborate, more dangerous. Derek's eyes gleamed. "Well, if you insist. Though it's not something I talk about much. The nightmares, you know." As he launched into a vivid tale of Taliban fighters and heroic rescues that I knew had never happened, I felt something inside me crack. Not dramatically, not with fanfare, just a quiet, decisive fracture, like ice breaking under too much weight. I'd met Derek at a friend's barbecue 4 months after my discharge from the Army. I'd served 6 years as a military intelligence analyst, nothing glamorous but honest work. I'd seen action, sure. A mortar attack on our base in Iraq that killed 2 soldiers I knew. The constant tension of threat assessments and intelligence reports that could mean life or death for patrols going outside the wire. But I didn't talk about it. Not because it wasn't significant, but because it felt private. Sacred, even. The weight of those experiences wasn't meant to be currency in social situations or leverage for career advancement. Derek had seemed to understand that. He'd been so attentive, so interested in my past without making it the centerpiece of who I was. He'd told me he'd served 2. National Guard, nothing major, mostly training exercises. I'd appreciated his humility about it. It wasn't until after we married that the stories started to change. Shift, grow. A training exercise in Texas became a deployment to Kuwait. Kuwait became Iraq. Iraq became Afghanistan. Suddenly he was Special Forces. Then a Ranger. The stories multiplied like cancer cells, each one more elaborate than the last. And I'd stayed quiet. At first because I'd thought maybe I was misremembering. Maybe he had mentioned those things, and I'd forgotten. Then because confronting him felt too hard, too risky. The first time I gently questioned a detail, he'd exploded. Accused me of not trusting him, of trying to diminish his service, of being unsupportive. The accusations had landed like body blows. I'd backed down. Then it became easier to stay silent than to face his rage. Easier to let him tell his stories than to challenge them. Easier to make myself smaller and smaller until I almost disappeared entirely. But tonight, listening to him describe combat operations that never happened in places he'd never been, using terminology he barely understood. Tonight something was different. The sand was in our eyes, our weapons, Derek was saying, his voice taking on that gravelly quality he used when describing combat. But we couldn't stop. Those civilians were counting on us. I could hear their screams. "Excuse me," I said abruptly, standing so quickly my chair scraped against the hardwood floor. Everyone stopped. Derek's mouth froze mid-sentence, his expression shifting from dramatic intensity to sharp warning. "Are you all right, dear?" Patricia asked, concerned. "Fine," I managed. "Just need to use the restroom." I could feel Derek's eyes burning into my back as I walked away from the table, my heels clicking against the marble floors of Marcus's palatial home. Behind me, I heard him smoothly cover. "She gets emotional. The war stories bring back memories of when I was deployed. Hard on the families, you know." More murmurs of understanding. More sympathy for poor Derek and his fragile wife. I found the bathroom and locked the door, bracing my hands on the cool granite counter. The woman in the mirror looked like a stranger. Hollow eyes, tight mouth. When had I become this person who swallowed truth like poison? My phone buzzed in my clutch. A text from my former commanding officer, Colonel Sarah Martinez. She'd been checking in on me more frequently lately, intuitive enough to sense something was wrong, even from 3 states away. "How's the dinner party? Remember, you don't owe anyone your silence. Not even him." Sarah didn't know the full extent of what Derek had been doing. She knew enough to be concerned. We'd had coffee last month when she was in town, and I'd let slip a few details about Derek's stories. Her face had gone very still, very cold. "Rachel," she'd said carefully, "stolen valor is a serious issue. If he's claiming military service he didn't earn—" "It's complicated," I'd interrupted. "He did serve. National Guard. He's just embellishing. Embellishing is saying you got a promotion faster than you did. What you're describing is fraud. But I'd made excuses, defended him, protected him. Why? I stared at my reflection, really looked at it for the first time in months. This wasn't who I'd been in uniform. That Rachel had been strong, decisive, unafraid to speak truth to power. That Rachel had earned commendations for analytical precision and unflinching honesty in intelligence assessments. Where had she gone? Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, like this video, it means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Another text from Sarah. If you need backup, I'm one call away, always. I closed my eyes, breathing deeply. Through the bathroom door, I could hear the muffled sounds of laughter and conversation. Derek was probably back to his story, embellishing further, feeding off the attention like it was oxygen. How many more dinners? How many more lies? How many more times would I erase myself to prop up his fiction? My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't Sarah. It was a notification from the Army-Navy Country Club where Derek had been, angling for membership. He'd submitted his application 3 weeks ago, heavy on his military background. The notification was a welcome email. Congratulations on his acceptance, a special veteran's rate because of his distinguished service. Something hot and sharp crystallized in my chest. Not just anger, something clearer, more focused. This had to stop. I pulled out my phone and opened the secure folder I'd created months ago. Inside were documents I'd been collecting almost without realizing it. Screenshots of Derek's various social media claims, copies of forms he'd filled out claiming veteran status for discounts, job applications, social opportunities. Each one a little worse than the last. I'd told myself I was documenting things in case I needed them someday, but I'd never intended to actually use them, until now. My fingers moved across the screen almost of their own volition. I opened my contacts and found the number I'd saved but never called, Commander James Peterson at the Naval Criminal Investigative Service. We'd worked together briefly during my deployment, and he'd reached out last year when they were investigating stolen valor cases. "If you ever come across anything," he'd said, "we take this seriously. It's not just about the lie. It's about the resources, the respect, the opportunities stolen from real veterans." I'd nodded, never imagining I'd need that number for my own husband. Before I could second-guess myself, I typed out a message. "Commander Peterson, this is Rachel Thornton. We worked together in Iraq. I need to discuss a potential stolen valor case. Can we talk tomorrow?" The message sat on my screen, unsent, for 30 seconds that felt like 30 years. Then I hit send. The response came almost immediately. "Absolutely. Are you safe? If this is urgent, I can make arrangements tonight." Safe. Was I safe? Derek had never physically hurt me. His weapons were words, manipulation, the slow erosion of my sense of self. But violence came in many forms. "Tomorrow is fine," I typed back. "But I need to be thorough. This is personal." "Understood. I'll make time. Stay strong, Rachel." I slipped my phone back into my clutch, studying my reflection one more time. Color had returned to my cheeks. My eyes looked sharper, clearer. The woman in the mirror was starting to look familiar again. I straightened my shoulders, smoothed down my dress, and unlocked the bathroom door. As I walked back toward the dining room, I could hear Derek's voice rising and falling in practiced cadence, spinning another tale for his captive audience. But with each step, I felt less like the woman who'd left the table and more like the soldier I'd been. Strategic, focused, ready. The time for silence was over. When I returned to the dining room, dessert had been served. Some elaborate chocolate construction that probably cost more than our grocery budget for a month. Derek glanced up, his expression a mixture of relief and warning. "Behave," that look said. "Don't embarrass me." I slid into my chair and picked up my fork, cutting into the chocolate tower with surgical precision. "You missed the best part," Marcus said jovially. "Derek was just telling us about the commendation ceremony. Silver Star, wasn't it?" My fork stopped halfway to my mouth. Silver Star, one of the highest military honors for valor in combat, given only for genuine acts of extraordinary heroism. Derek had the grace to look slightly uncomfortable. "Bronze Star," he corrected quickly. "Easy to mix up." "Still incredibly impressive," Patricia breathed. I set down my fork very carefully. "Derek," I said softly, "tell me again about that ceremony. Where was it?" His eyes snapped to mine, dark with anger barely contained. "Rachel, honey, nobody wants to hear—" "I do," I interrupted, my voice still quiet but carrying an edge of steel I'd almost forgotten I possessed. "I'm very interested in hearing about your Bronze Star ceremony." The table went silent. Marcus looked confused, Patricia concerned. The other executives exchanged uncertain glances. Derek's jaw clenched. "This isn't the time." "Really?" "Because it seemed like the perfect time a moment ago when you were describing it to everyone else." I turned to Marcus with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Did he tell you about the citation? What it was for specifically?" "Rachel." Derek's voice was low, dangerous, a threat wrapped in my name. But I was done being threatened, done being silenced, done disappearing. "I'm just curious," I continued, maintaining that same calm tone. "Because Bronze Stars are serious business. They require witness statements, command approval, detailed documentation. The ceremony alone is quite an event." Derek's face had gone from flushed to pale. "We don't need to discuss this now." "Why not?" "You've been discussing your military service all evening. I'm just asking for some details." I paused, letting the silence stretch. "You know, for someone who served with such distinction, you've never actually shown me any of that documentation. That's because—" he started. "Because what, Derek?" The air in the room had changed. Even Marcus was starting to look uncertain now, his jovial host persona cracking at the edges. "Some of us," Derek said through gritted teeth, "don't feel the need to prove ourselves constantly. Some of us carry our service with quiet dignity." I almost laughed. Quiet dignity. From the man who'd spent the last 3 hours regaling strangers with elaborate combat stories. "Of course," I murmured, picking up my fork again. "Quiet dignity. That's certainly one way to describe it." But the seed had been planted. I could see it in the way Marcus was now looking at Derek with slightly more scrutiny. The way Patricia's smile had become forced, the questioning glances being exchanged around the table. Derek would realize what I'd done soon enough. The first crack in his carefully constructed facade. Not enough to shatter it, not yet, but enough to let the light in. Enough to begin. The rest of dinner passed in strained conversation. Derek tried to steer things toward safer topics. Marcus's golf game, the company's quarterly earnings, an upcoming merger. But the energy had shifted. The spell was broken. As we prepared to leave, Marcus shook Derek's hand with noticeably less enthusiasm than when we'd arrived. "Thanks for coming," he said, his tone professional rather than warm. "We'll have to do this again sometime." The vague promise of a man already backing away. In the car, Derek's silence was nuclear. He didn't speak as he started the engine, didn't look at me as we pulled out of the circular driveway. The tension was so thick it was almost solid. We were 3 blocks away when he finally exploded. "What the hell was that?" He didn't yell. Derek never yelled in public spaces where people might hear. But his voice was low and vicious, each word a blade. Do you have any idea what you just did? I asked some questions about your Bronze Star. You undermined me, in front of my boss, in front of the entire executive team. His knuckles were white on the steering wheel. Do you know how long I've been working toward this promotion? How important tonight was? Then maybe you shouldn't have built it on lies. The car swerved slightly as his head whipped toward me. Lies? I didn't lie about anything. Derek. My voice was tired. So tired. Just stop. Please just stop. Stop what? Talking about my service? Sharing my experiences? Sharing experiences you never had. You were never deployed to Afghanistan. You never received a Bronze Star. You were never in combat. You served 2 years in the National Guard doing weekend training exercises in Texas, and you were honorably discharged because you couldn't handle the commitment. The silence that followed was absolute. Then, who told you that? Not denial, not outrage at the accusation, just who told you that? Does it matter? I asked quietly. Yes, it matters. Because someone has been filling your head with lies, Rachel. Someone who wants to tear us apart. Who is it? One of your military friends? That colonel who keeps texting you? No one told me anything. I have your DD-214, Derek. Your service record. I've had it for months. Another silence. Longer this time. You went through my papers? They're not exactly hidden. You left them in the file cabinet under important documents. I was looking for our marriage certificate for the insurance paperwork. Imagine my surprise when I found your discharge papers and realized your entire military history was fiction. That's not... He stopped. Started again. You don't understand. I was going to deploy. I was ready. But they... But they what, Derek? They didn't deploy the National Guard unit because there was no need? Because your service, while honorable, was simply not what you've been claiming for 3 years? He pulled the car over abruptly, parking on a side street under a broken streetlight. When he turned to me, his face was illuminated only by the dashboard glow. Why are you doing this? His voice had changed. Not angry anymore. Almost pleading. Why now? After all this time? Because it's wrong, Derek. It's fraud. It's stolen valor. It's illegal. Illegal? He scoffed. Don't be dramatic. So I embellished a little. Everyone does it. You think Marcus got where he is by being 100% honest? You think anyone in that room tonight was completely truthful about their accomplishments? This isn't about padding a resume or exaggerating your role in a project. You're claiming military service you didn't earn. You're wearing the accomplishments of actual heroes like they're a costume. And what about you? He shot back. You actually did serve, and you never talk about it. You act like it never happened. At least I'm honoring the military. Honoring? The word came out sharp as a gunshot. You think this is honoring anyone? You think the soldiers who actually earned Bronze Stars, who actually saw combat, who actually sacrificed, you think they feel honored by your lies? Our lies, he corrected. You've been sitting there saying nothing for 3 years. You let me tell these stories. You never contradicted me. That makes you complicit. The accusation hit like a physical blow, because he was right. I had been complicit. I had sat silent through dinner parties and work events and casual conversations. I had watched him build his house of cards and never once blown on it. Until tonight. You're right, I said quietly. I should have stopped this a long time ago. I should have spoken up the first time you claimed a deployment you never had. I should have... But you didn't, he interrupted. Because deep down, you knew it was harmless. You knew it didn't really matter. It does matter. And it's going to stop. Or what? His voice was cold now. You'll tell people? Humiliate me? Destroy my career? Our life together? I'll tell the truth. What happens after that is on you. He stared at me for a long moment, his face unreadable in the dim light. Then he laughed, a bitter, hollow sound. You think anyone will believe you? You think Marcus and Patricia and everyone at that dinner will take your word over mine? They saw a quiet, mousy little wife getting emotional and making weird accusations. I'm the decorated veteran. The hero? Who do you think they'll trust? We'll see, I said simply. His expression changed, hardened. This is because of that colonel, isn't it? Sarah, what's her name? She's been putting ideas in your head. This is because I finally remembered who I am and who I'm not. I'm not someone who lives a lie, not even for you. Rachel. His voice shifted again, trying for conciliatory. Baby, listen. We can work this out. I'll tone down the stories, okay? Make them less specific. Would that make you happy? Tone them down? I felt something like hysteria bubbling up in my chest. Derek, you claimed a silver star at dinner tonight. Before that, it was a bronze star. Last month at the neighborhood barbecue, you told 3 different combat stories. The month before that, you applied for veterans' benefits you're not entitled to. This isn't about toning anything down. This is about you stealing an identity you never earned. And what about your identity? He demanded, his voice rising. You want to talk about fraud? You walk around pretending you never served at all. You hide your service like it's something shameful. At least I'm proud of the military. At least I'm honoring it. Stop saying that. You're not honoring anything. You're cheapening it. You're making it a prop in your personal advancement strategy. So what happens now? His voice was flat. Dead. You divorce me? Tell everyone I'm a liar? Ruin everything we've built? What we've built is a lie, Derek. All of it. This whole life is constructed on a foundation of your stolen valor. It's not stolen if no one was hurt by it. People are hurt by it. Every actual veteran who sees you receive praise for things you never did. Every real hero whose accomplishments are diminished when people like you claim them. Jesus Christ, Rachel. Listen to yourself. You sound insane. You're throwing away our marriage, my career, everything, because you've got some self-righteous stick-up-your-ass about exact military records. No, I said quietly. I'm stopping you from committing fraud. There's a difference. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he started the car without another word. The rest of the drive home was silent. But it wasn't the oppressive silence of before. This was different. Colder. Final. When we pulled into our driveway, Derek killed the engine but didn't move to get out. If you do this, he said without looking at me, we're done. You understand that? You blow up my life, our marriage is over. I know. And you're okay with that? With destroying everything we have? I looked at our house, modest but comfortable, the result of my veteran's home loan and our combined incomes. Through the windows, I could see the living room we'd painted together, the furniture we'd picked out, the life we'd supposedly built as partners. But it had never really been a partnership, had it? It had been me making myself smaller and smaller while he inflated himself bigger and bigger. Me disappearing while he claimed space he hadn't earned. What we have, I said slowly, is already destroyed. It's been destroyed for a while. I just finally stopped pretending otherwise. I got out of the car before he could respond, walking up the driveway with my head held high. Behind me, I heard his door slam, his footsteps on the concrete. Rachel. I stopped but didn't turn around. You're making a huge mistake. Maybe, I agreed, but it's my mistake to make. I unlocked the front door and stepped inside, not waiting to see if he followed. In the kitchen, I poured myself a glass of water with shaking hands. My phone buzzed. Another text from Sarah. "You okay?" Something felt off about tonight. I typed back, "Called NCIS. Meeting tomorrow. It's time." The 3 dots appeared immediately, showing she was typing. Then, "I'm proud of you. Want backup?" "Yes," I replied. "Please." Another buzz. "I'll be there. You're not alone in this." I heard Derek come in through the front door, his footsteps heavy on the hardwood. He went straight upstairs without speaking to me. A few minutes later, I heard the shower running. I stood in the kitchen, sipping my water, thinking about tomorrow, about Commander Peterson and the investigation that would follow, about the evidence I'd gathered, about the truth that was about to come out. Part of me felt guilty, felt like I was betraying my husband, destroying our life together. But a bigger part, the part that had worn the uniform, that had taken an oath, that understood what service and sacrifice really meant, that part knew this was right. Derek had stolen something sacred, and it was time to give it back. I pulled out my phone and opened the folder of evidence again. Screenshots, documents, recordings, 3 years of accumulated lies, carefully documented. Tomorrow, I would hand it all over to Commander Peterson. Tomorrow, the house of cards would start to fall. But tonight, I was going to sleep in the guest room, and I was going to remember who I was before I became Derek's silent accomplice. I was going to remember Rachel Thornton, U.S. Army veteran, intelligence analyst, woman who served her country with honor. And tomorrow I was going to fight for her and for every veteran whose honor Derek had stolen. One last time. The shower shut off upstairs. I heard Derek moving around in the bedroom. Part of me wondered if I should go up there, try one more time to talk through this. But I knew how that conversation would go. More deflection, more manipulation, more ways to make this my fault, my problem, my overreaction? No. I'd been silent long enough. I finished my water, rinsed the glass, and headed to the guest room. As I passed our bedroom, I could see light under the door. Could hear Derek's muffled voice. He was on the phone with someone. Probably already trying to control the narrative. Already building his defense. Already figuring out how to make me the villain in this story. Let him try. Tomorrow, the truth would begin to come out. And truth, I'd learned in my years of intelligence work, had a way of cutting through even the most elaborate deceptions. I lay down on the guest bed, still in my dress, staring at the ceiling. Tomorrow would change everything. The life I'd built, flawed and compromised as it was, would be gone. But maybe that's what needed to happen. Maybe you had to demolish the broken foundation before you could build something real. My phone buzzed one more time. This time it was from Commander Peterson. "Got your message. This takes courage, Rachel. We'll handle this right. Get some rest." I closed my eyes, feeling tears slide down my temples into my hair. Not tears of sadness exactly, more like release. Relief. The burden of silence had been crushing me for 3 years. Tomorrow I was going to set it down. Tomorrow the real fight would begin. But tonight, for the first time in years, I was going to sleep like a soldier, alert, prepared, and ready for battle. Morning came with the sharp clarity that follows life-changing decisions. I woke at 060 hours, old habits die hard, and found Derek already gone. His side of the bed hadn't been slept in. A note on the kitchen counter read simply, "Staying at Mike's. We both need space." Mike was his college buddy, the one who'd never served but loved Derek's war stories. Perfect audience for whatever narrative Derek was already spinning. My meeting with Commander Peterson was at 1,000 hours. Sarah was driving up from Richmond and would meet me there. I had 3 hours to prepare myself for what came next. I showered, dressed in clothes that felt like armor, pressed slacks, crisp white blouse, my old army jacket that still fit perfectly. When I looked in the mirror, I saw the woman I'd been before Derek, before the lies, before I'd learned to make myself invisible. My phone had 17 missed calls, all from Derek's number. No voicemails. He knew better than to leave evidence. At Oro 9:30, Sarah's car pulled into my driveway. She was in civilian clothes but carried herself with unmistakable military bearing. When she hugged me, I felt some of the tension leave my shoulders. "You ready for this?" she asked. "I've been ready for 3 years. I just didn't know it." The NCIS field office was in a nondescript building downtown. Commander Peterson met us in the lobby, older than I remembered, gray at the temples now, but with the same sharp eyes that missed nothing. "Rachel," he said, shaking my hand firmly, "thank you for coming forward. I know this isn't easy." We settled into a conference room, and I laid out everything. The DD-214 that showed Derek's actual service, 2 years, National Guard, stateside training only, honorable discharge for failure to meet participation requirements. The screenshots of his social media posts claiming combat deployments, the veterans' benefits applications, the country club membership application claiming decorated service, the recorded conversations from dinner parties where he'd described combat operations in detail. Peterson's expression grew grimmer with each piece of evidence. "How long has this been going on?" he asked. 3 years that I know of. But it could be longer. These are just the instances I documented." "And he knows you're here?" "He knows I found his service records. He knows I'm done staying quiet. But he doesn't know I've contacted NCIS." Peterson exchanged glances with Sarah. "He's going to find out soon. Cases like this, word travels fast. Especially if he's been this public about his claims." "I understand. Rachel?" Peterson leaned forward. "I need you to understand what happens next. We'll open a formal investigation. We'll interview witnesses, review documents, contact his employer. This will become public. Your husband will face federal charges if we find sufficient evidence, and based on what you've shown me, we will. He could face fines, possibly jail time. Your marriage will be scrutinized. Your life will be disrupted." "My life has been disrupted for 3 years," I said quietly. "I just stopped acknowledging it." He nodded. "Then let's begin." The interview lasted 3 hours. Every claim Derek had made, every benefit he'd received, every door his false service had opened. Peterson's assistant took notes while recording everything. Sarah sat beside me, a silent pillar of support. When it was over, Peterson walked us to the lobby. "We'll move quickly on this," he said. "I'll have agents contact his employer today, interview witnesses from last night's dinner. Within 48 hours, he'll know there's an investigation. I wanted you to be prepared." "What should I do?" "Document everything. If he contacts you, don't delete messages. Don't meet him alone if you feel unsafe. And Rachel?" He paused. "You did the right thing. For every veteran whose service he cheapened, you did the right thing." I nodded, not trusting my voice. In Sarah's car, she didn't start the engine immediately. "Where's Derek now?" "His friend Mike's house. He left this morning." "Good. That gives you time to prepare. Do you have a lawyer?" "Not yet." "You need one. Today." She pulled out her phone. "I know someone. Military spouse specialist." She's handled cases like this before. By that evening, I'd met with Jennifer Walsh, attorney at law. She was efficient, empathetic, and brutally honest. Your husband has exposed himself to both criminal prosecution and civil liability, she explained. Veterans he defrauded could sue. Employers could sue for fraudulent hiring. And you need to protect yourself legally and financially. How? We file for divorce immediately. We make it clear you were unaware of the extent of his fraud until recently. We cooperate fully with the investigation, and we get your finances separated before his assets are frozen. My head spun. This is really happening. This is really happening, she confirmed. But Rachel, you're doing the right thing, both morally and legally. If you'd continued to stay silent, you could have been charged as an accessory. That night, I returned to an empty house. Derek's texts had turned from angry to pleading to threatening and back again. I screenshotted everything and sent them to Jennifer. At 2100 hours, there was a knock at my door. Through the peephole, I saw Derek. I opened the door but didn't invite him in. He looked terrible. Unshaven, disheveled, eyes red-rimmed. Rachel, please, we need to talk. About what? About you destroying our lives. About you going to NCIS. Yeah, I know. Marcus got a call today from federal investigators asking about my military background. Do you know what you've done? I reported a crime. A crime? His voice rose. I never hurt anyone. I never stole anything. You stole valor. You stole respect meant for actual combat veterans. You stole opportunities from people who earned them honestly. This is insane. You're throwing away our marriage over some technicality. This isn't a technicality, Derek. You committed fraud, federal fraud, and I was complicit by staying silent. Not anymore. His expression shifted, calculating. Marcus fired me today. Did you know that? Effective immediately. Said he couldn't have someone under federal investigation on his executive team. 7 years with that company, gone. Because of you. Because of your lies. Our lies, he spat. You sat there for 3 years saying nothing. You let me tell those stories. You smiled and nodded and played the supportive wife. You don't get to suddenly develop a conscience and act like you're innocent. You're right, I said, the words burning my throat. I should have stopped this the first time. I should have protected the honor of actual veterans instead of protecting your ego. That's on me. But I'm correcting that mistake now. By ruining me, by destroying everything, by telling the truth. He stared at me, breathing hard. Then his shoulders slumped. Please, Rachel, please don't do this. I'll admit I exaggerated. I'll apologize. I'll make it right. Just call off the investigation. I can't. Even if I wanted to, it's out of my hands now. Then what do you want? Do you want me to beg? Fine. I'm begging. Please don't let them prosecute me. Please don't destroy my life. Looking at him, I felt something unexpected. Pity. This man I'd loved, who I'd tried to build a life with, reduced to this. But pity wasn't enough to make me back down. Derek, you did this to yourself. Every lie, every false claim, every stolen piece of honor. That was your choice. Now you face the consequences. You self-righteous... He caught himself, visibly forcing calm. Fine. If you won't help me, at least stay out of it. Tell them you were mistaken. Tell them you misunderstood. I won't perjure myself to save you. His face hardened. Then I'll tell them you knew all along. That you helped me. That you encouraged it. Go ahead, I said calmly. I have documentation showing when I discovered the truth. I have texts, emails, everything showing I confronted you and you became hostile. Try to drag me down with you, and you'll just make your case worse." He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came. Finally, "I loved you." "No," I said softly. "You loved what I could do for you. The credibility my actual service gave your lies. The silent witness who made your stories believable. You loved having a real veteran in your pocket while you played dress up. That's not fair. Neither is what you did to every veteran who actually earned what you claimed." He stood there for another moment, then turned and walked away. I watched him get into his car, the expensive sedan he'd bought after his last promotion, the one built on false pretenses, and drive off. I closed the door and locked it. Then I sat on my couch and cried for the first time since this began. Not for Derek, not even for our marriage, but for the years I'd lost making myself smaller, quieter, less than I was. The next day, the story broke. Local news picked it up first. Area executive under investigation for stolen valor. Then regional outlets. Then military news sites. Derek's face was everywhere, alongside screenshots of his false claims. My phone exploded. Friends, family, former Army colleagues. Everyone wanted to know if it was true, if I'd known, how I was handling it. Sarah fielded most of it, running interference while I focused on cooperating with the investigation. Commander Peterson had been thorough, interviewing Marcus, Patricia, every dinner guest from that fatal night. Each one confirmed Derek's elaborate claims. The evidence was damning. On day 3, Derek was formally charged with violating the Stolen Valor Act, 3 counts of fraudulently claiming military decorations, 5 counts of fraudulent use of veterans' benefits, maximum penalties, fines up to $100,000, and a year in federal prison per count. His lawyers tried to argue diminished capacity, emotional disturbance, misunderstanding of the law. None of it stuck. The evidence was too clear, too documented, too extensive. Marcus gave a statement to the press. "Reynolds Industries has 0 tolerance for dishonesty. Mr. Morrison's employment was terminated immediately upon learning of the investigation. We extend our deepest apologies to the veteran community." The country club revoked Derek's membership. The veterans' organizations he'd infiltrated expelled him. His social media accounts, once full of combat stories and patriotic posturing, were deleted or locked. He'd built his identity on a lie, and now that identity was being systematically dismantled. My divorce filing made the local news too. Wife who exposed stolen valor files for divorce. Jennifer had crafted the petition carefully. I'd been unaware of the extent of the fraud, had only recently discovered it, was cooperating fully with authorities. Derek contested nothing. His lawyer admitted privately that fighting would only make things worse. 6 weeks after that fateful dinner, I sat in Commander Peterson's office for a follow-up meeting. "The case is solid," he told me. "Derek has agreed to plead guilty to avoid trial. Sentencing is next month." "What's he likely to get?" "Given the extent of the fraud, the benefits obtained, the false claims made, probably 6 months federal prison, 3 years probation, $50,000 in fines and restitution." I nodded slowly. It seemed both too much and not enough. "There's something else," Peterson continued. "Your cooperation, your documentation, your willingness to come forward. It's made this case airtight. We've also used your evidence to identify a pattern. Derek claimed membership in veterans organizations, got special hiring considerations, even applied for benefits he wasn't entitled to. The total fraud value exceeds $200,000. The number stunned me. I had no idea it was that extensive. Most spouses don't. But Rachel, because of you, we're recovering those funds. We're correcting the record. And we're sending a message that stolen valor has consequences. Sarah had joined me for this meeting. What about Rachel's service? Will this affect her reputation? Peterson shook his head firmly. Rachel's record is impeccable. Her DD-214 shows honorable service, good conduct medals, commendation for analytical excellence. If anything, her reputation is enhanced. She's shown integrity under incredibly difficult circumstances. The veteran community has been supportive, I offered. Mostly. Mostly? Peterson raised an eyebrow. Some people think I should have handled it privately, that going public was vindictive. Those people don't understand stolen valor, Sarah said sharply. This wasn't a private matter. Derek made it public every time he claimed false service. Every time he took benefits meant for real veterans. Peterson nodded. Exactly. Rachel, what you did took courage. Real courage, not the fake kind your husband claimed. The words settled over me like a medal I'd actually earned. The divorce was finalized 8 weeks later. No contest, clean split. Derek kept his debts and legal troubles. I kept the house, purchased with my VA loan anyway, and my dignity. The day the papers were signed, I drove to Arlington National Cemetery. I walked among the white headstones, reading names and dates, thinking about real sacrifice, real service, real heroes who never got the chance to lie about what they'd done because they'd given everything. This was what Derek had cheapened. This was what he'd stolen. I found a quiet spot under an oak tree and called Sarah. It's done, I said simply. How do you feel? Lighter, sad, angry, relieved, all of it at once. That's normal. You ended a marriage and exposed a fraud. That's heavy lifting. Sarah, did I do the right thing? Rachel. Her voice was firm. You absolutely did. Not just legally, morally. You protected something bigger than your marriage. You protected the integrity of service itself. After we hung up, I sat under that tree for another hour, watching families visit graves, seeing tour groups learn about history, witnessing the living honor the dead. These were the real veterans. The ones who'd earned every medal, every honor, every moment of recognition. Derek had tried to steal their glory, and I'd stopped him. That night, I received an unexpected visitor. Marcus, my ex-husband's former boss, stood on my doorstep looking uncomfortable. Rachel, I hope this isn't inappropriate, but I needed to speak with you. I invited him in, curious. I owe you an apology, he began, settling into my living room chair. That dinner, I enabled Derek. I celebrated him. I praised him for service he never performed, and I never once questioned it. You had no reason to, didn't I? He shook his head. Patricia did some research after that night, after you asked those questions. She found that Derek's stories didn't quite add up. Wrong terminology, wrong timelines. But we'd been so impressed by him, so taken in by his confidence, that we ignored the red flags. He was convincing. He was a fraud. And you were the real veteran sitting right there, and we never even asked about your service. Never even acknowledged it. Marcus leaned forward. Patricia and I want to make this right. We're establishing a scholarship fund for children of veterans, real veterans, verified service only. We'd like to name you as an advisory board member. I was speechless. It's not enough, Marcus continued. It doesn't undo what happened. But maybe it prevents the next Derek. Maybe it honors people who actually served. I'd be honored, I managed. After he left, I poured myself a glass of wine and stepped onto my back porch. The night was clear, stars visible despite the city lights. My phone buzzed. Commander Peterson. Sentencing tomorrow, 10 a.m., Court 6B. You don't have to attend, but you're welcome if you want closure. I thought about it all night. The courtroom was half full when I arrived. Media in the back, Peterson and his team on one side, Derek's lawyer on the other, and Derek himself wearing a suit that no longer fit quite right, looking smaller somehow. He saw me enter. Our eyes met. He looked away first. The judge was efficient. Read the charges, confirmed the guilty plea, heard from prosecutors about the extent of the fraud. Then, does the defendant wish to make a statement? Derek stood, his lawyer beside him. Your Honor, I want to apologize. To the court, to the veteran community, and to my ex-wife. I got caught up in trying to be something I wasn't. I wanted respect I hadn't earned. I was wrong, and I'm sorry. The words sounded rehearsed. Probably were, but there was something genuine in his voice too. Real regret, or at least real understanding of what he'd lost. The judge wasn't moved. Mr. Morrison, stolen valor isn't just a lie. It's a betrayal of every person who actually served, who actually sacrificed, who actually earned the honors you claimed. You didn't just deceive people, you stole something sacred. Sentencing: 8 months federal prison, 3 years supervised release, $75,000 in fines and restitution, mandatory community service at veterans' facilities upon release. Derek's shoulders sagged as the bailiff led him away. He didn't look back. Outside the courthouse, media swarmed. I pushed through, declining comments until I heard someone call my name. A woman approached, older, wearing an Army veteran cap. Rachel Thornton? Yes? I'm Margaret Chen. My son served in Afghanistan, earned a Bronze Star for valor, died 3 months after coming home. Her eyes were wet, but her voice was steady. Thank you for what you did, for protecting what he earned. I couldn't speak, just nodded. She squeezed my hand and walked away. That moment, more than anything in the courtroom, felt like closure. 6 months later, I stood at a podium in the Reynolds Community Center, addressing a room full of veterans and their families. The scholarship fund Marcus and Patricia established had awarded its first grants, 5 deserving kids of verified veterans, each receiving full tuition support. Service is sacred, I told the audience. Not because it's perfect, not because everyone who serves is a hero, but because it's real. It's a choice to put something bigger than yourself first. My ex-husband forgot that. He thought he could claim the glory without earning it. But this community knows better. Applause filled the room. I saw Sarah in the front row, pride shining in her eyes. Saw Marcus and Patricia, committed to making amends. Saw veterans young and old, each one wearing their service with quiet dignity, the kind Derek had never understood. After the ceremony, a young woman approached me, early 20s, wearing a new Army uniform. Ma'am, I'm about to deploy to Kuwait, my first time overseas. She was nervous, excited. I heard about what you did, about standing up for real service. It means something to people like me. Thank you. I shook her hand. Serve honorably. Come home safe. That's all anyone can ask. She nodded and walked away, her future full of possibilities, her service untainted. That night, alone in my house, truly mine now, no shadows of lies or stolen honor, I pulled out my old Army uniform. I hadn't worn it in years, had kept it buried in the back of my closet during my marriage. I tried it on. Still fit, though snugger in places. In the mirror, I saw who I'd been and who I'd become. The girl who'd enlisted young and idealistic. The analyst who'd served with competence and honor. The wife who'd lost herself in someone else's lies. And finally, the woman who'd found her voice and used it. The journey had cost me a marriage, years of my life, and the comfortable fiction that silence was the same as peace. But I'd reclaimed something more valuable: integrity. My phone buzzed. A text from the young soldier I'd met earlier. "Wheels up tomorrow, thinking about your words. Gonna make my service count." I replied, "You already are. Stay safe." I changed out of the uniform and hung it carefully in the closet. Not hidden this time. Front and center. Tomorrow, I had a meeting with a veteran support group. They wanted to discuss how to identify stolen valor, how to address it without destroying families, how to protect the sanctity of service while offering paths to redemption for those who'd lost their way. It was work I never imagined doing, but it was work that mattered. As I settled into bed, I thought about Derek. He was 4 months into his sentence now, supposedly doing well, working in the prison library, attending counseling, learning what actual humility looked like. I didn't hate him anymore, didn't love him either. He was just a man who'd made terrible choices and was facing consequences. Human, flawed, lost. The path from there to here had been harder than any deployment, more challenging than any mission. But I'd walked it with my eyes open and my integrity intact. That was its own kind of valor. Not the stolen kind, the earned kind. And as I drifted off to sleep, I thought about Margaret Chen and her son who'd actually earned his Bronze Star, about the young soldier heading to Kuwait, about every veteran who'd served honestly and never asked for false praise. I'd fought for them, and I'd won. Not a crushing victory, not a dramatic vindication, just the quiet triumph of truth over lies, integrity over convenience, courage over silence. In the end, that was the only victory that mattered. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.